We're looking ahead to the 2019 Cattle Industry Convention and NCBA trade show that will bring thousands of cattlemen and women and their families to New Orleans, Louisiana. Besides the fun, the business, and the networking of the convention itself, New Orleans has many places to go for art, history, and culture. Cattleman and Cattleman reporter Brian Baxter has a look at a museum that tells the story of the war that changed the world.
Just about a 6-block walk from the New Orleans Convention Center, you'll find the #1 tourist destination in the city, the National World War II Museum.
Our mission is to tell why the war was fought, how the war was fought, and what it means today. So the building that we're standing in right now, our Louisiana Pavilion, really tells the story of why the war was fought. We have an exhibit called The Arsenal of Democracy that talks about the rise of fascism, the rise of the Axis powers, talks about the huge debate that was going on in the United States about whether we should get involved or not. But then, of course, Pearl Harbor happens and everybody was in it together.
This is a place that brings history to life. In 2004, Congress designated this as the official National World War II Museum. And ever since, one of the most common questions has been, why New Orleans?
There's two major reasons why the museum is here in New Orleans. The first is because Higgins Industries was here. And many people don't know what Higgins Industries was, but they've seen the iconic landing craft. When the guys came ashore on D-Day, those boats that with the front ramp dropping down was called the Higgins boat. And every landing, whether it was in the Pacific or in the Atlantic, came out of those boats. And all 22,000 of them were made right here in New Orleans by Higgins Industries. The other reason is because our founders, Stephen Ambrose, who's well known as the author of Band of Brothers, among a number of other books, and Dr. Nick Mueller were both professors here at the University of New Orleans.
Today, the museum stretches across a 6-acre campus. There are 5 pavilions that offer detailed exhibits, multimedia experiences, and thousands of personal accounts of World War II and the people who lived through it.
World War II, we always say it was the war that changed the world, and it truly was. That 5-year period for the United States in the first half of the 20th century is one of those few times where you can see that history took a right turn. Everything changed because of what happened. It becomes abstract the more time that goes on and the more you learn about it just through books or something like that. But being able to actually learn about the war from the veterans themselves has been very important to this museum from the very beginning. So as you go through our exhibits, you'll see oral histories with incorporated in where the veterans actually telling their own story. And we have over 9,500 oral histories that we use as the center points of our educational programming. So even sadly, once the World War II generation is gone, their history will live on here, and we'll be able to still teach people in as first person a method as we can. We also have an exhibit talking about how we became the arsenal of democracy, how American industrial power, to include our beef producers, not only kept the war effort of the United States going, but also our allies. So that's this building, talks about the why the war was fought. But then you move on into our Campaigns of Courage Pavilion, and that's the How the War Was Fought Pavilion. On the second floor, we have what's called the Road to Tokyo exhibit that tells all about the Pacific War. And then on the first floor, we have the European War told through the Road to Berlin exhibit.
Tours of the museum are self-guided, so you can follow whatever path interests you the most. One key to the museum's success is its volunteer program, which includes a number of World War II veterans.
One of the really neat things is that on a daily basis, right by the front entrance, we have a table where we always have at least 1 or 2 World War II veterans. And I particularly like to see the school groups with them, because seeing young kids learning about World War II from somebody who actually participated is something special. But at the same time, you can also see that the veterans love it too.
Ann Crane says those at the museum are eager to share the detailed history of World War II with the cattlemen and women who will be visiting during the 2019 Cattle Industry Convention.
We're really happy to have your group here, not only in New Orleans, but here at the World War II Museum, because they actually have a history tied directly to the war. Beef production in the war was huge. As a matter of fact, in 1942, the demand was such that we even had to import from other countries. And that was at the same time that many of the same men that were working to raise the cattle and bring everything to market were also joining the military in droves. It's been a patriotic organization from the very beginning, and the service records of those soldiers who had been the ranchers prior to, it's telling, and it's part of the American story. And that's part of what we try to tell here. Then the other thing I really like is younger audience, younger guests that walk on out and say, I had no idea about that we did all of this in World War II, and that I feel better about our country because of their visit here. And that tells us that we're actually making a difference in their lives.
The National World War II Museum is open from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. daily, and it truly is an experience and destination you don't want to miss. In New Orleans, I'm Brian Baxter for NCBA's Cattleman to Cattleman.